same about the atomic bomb, right?
Yes, you could.
And you could say that we have to develop it.
That right there was just a small snippet of Tucker Carlson's interview on Joe Rogan. And trust me, there's a lot to discuss. So I want you guys to think about this video here as a bit of a review of what was actually said on said episode of the Joe Rogan Experience. But I want you to also know something else too. Some of the clips that we're going to be talking about, some of the things that were said, I'll put it this way here. There's going to be some headers over a lot of it. A lot of that is because every time I seem to do a video where the Joe Rogan Experience is in fact discussed, I always seem to get a copyright claim. So just go ahead and get ready for the fact that you're going to be hearing a lot more audio than anything actually visual. Just wanted to go ahead and get that out of the way. There's also something else too that I want to say that does relate to this video that quite frankly will be coming up over the weekend. I'm going to be doing a much, much larger video on the, let's just say the bombings of Japan, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki on Gear Issue 33. That one right there will be on Sunday. We will be hitting it here because obviously a lot of people were posting a lot of content about this. And of course, they were posting a lot of content on how it was that the Daily Wire, for whatever reason, responded very, very negatively to this. But the Daily Wire is not the only one who responded a certain way to what was actually said, which we'll get to this video. But I also want you guys to know right now that we're also going to be talking about that's right, the UFO question. I'm going to give you guys my thoughts on that because I did get into some trouble a while back for a take that, quite frankly, was done mostly out of ignorance that I'm going to be more than likely clarifying this in this video here. So make sure you guys stick around for the full video. And by the way, when I say more than likely, I'm saying more than likely based upon the experience and the knowledge that I have today. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into this video. So what was the take that caused this tweet from Jeremy Boring to basically say that anybody who believes that the moon landing was faked or anybody who didn't believe in the other conspiracy theories, which by the way, we're not allowed to mention here on YouTube, what was it that got these people up in the air? Well, I'm going to play the first half of it, and then I'm going to come back and explain what was going on, and then I'm also going to explain why it was that I think that Tucker is wrong here, and why it is that this is not going to be that different from what Ben Shapiro said in his 20-some-odd-minute rant against Tucker Carlson. But instead of the Daily Wire, or instead of being like the Daily Wire, I'm going to explain to you why it is that Jeremy Boring is also wrong with his take. So let's go ahead and watch this.
You could say the same about the atomic bomb, right?
Yes, you could.
And you could say that we have to develop it like Oppenheimer felt before the Nazis did.
I love that. How'd that work? How'd that work?
Well,
I love, by the way, that people on my side, I'll just admit it, on the right, have spent the last 80 years defending dropping nuclear weapons on civilians. Like, are you joking?
Right.
That's just like prima facie evil.
Yeah.
If you can't, if we hadn't done that, then this, that, the other thing, that was actually a great savings life. No, it's wrong to drop nuclear weapons on people. And if you find yourself arguing that it's a good thing to drop nuclear weapons on people, then you are evil.
People automatically went ahead and jumped the gun, and they went ahead and assumed that Tucker was talking about the U.S. nuking Japan. And, of course, that's pretty much for the most part what he was suggesting. I personally don't think it's evil for people to want nuclear weapons because if you listen to some people who believe that everybody else should have a nuclear weapon but us, they don't seem to realize that they would drop a nuke on us first chance they got. There's also a lot of people out there who believe that the Soviet Union really won World War II, when in reality it's much, much more nuanced than that. If anything, what happened was the Soviet Union won the post-World War II battle to get control of pretty much all of Europe. They had pretty much everything east of Berlin. And you could argue that we're at fault for that. That's a video that I'm going to be doing on Gear Issue 33 on why it was that George S. Patton was correct. We should have fought the Russians right then and there. Also, something else, too, the same people love to discount the people who actually gave their lives in the invasion of France there in the Normandy invasion. And, of course, they also forget that while Stalin was having a hard time defeating Hitler at the Battle of Kursk, it had pretty much got to a stalemate. They forget that we had just invaded Italy. And, of course, this right here forced Hitler to pull all of his Tiger tanks out of the field and send them to Italy. The truth be told about World War II is this here, and you can go with the Lend-Lease agreement, argument, whatever, which, by the way, the pro-Russia side will say it didn't matter. The fact of the matter is the vast majority of the people who screamed that Russia won World War II, quite frankly, don't know what the hell they're talking about. They constantly, just grift, and they constantly go with leftist lies that you hear from people like, say, Ryan Grimm or whoever, and even Trump said it a while back. I'm a Trump voter, and it pissed me the hell off. You're basically discounting everything that the men and women of this nation did when you basically say that the Russians won World War II. There's a reason why it is. We don't let them in at the party. And you'll hear me mention it again. At the very, very beginning of the war, they were actually on Hitler's side. Invaded Finland, invaded Poland. They were helping Hitler out. Okay, so, I mean, just saying. But also something else, too, when it comes to World War II, when it comes to the end of World War II, you guys do realize that we were about to invade Japan. Okay? We dropped the bombs to save our men and ended up saving a lot of Russian lives, too, who, for whatever reason, chose to come into that theater at the very end and claim that they won when they hadn't been fighting at all. People also forget that, yes, Nazis are bad, but we were also fighting Imperial Japan. Knowing Better did a great video on this. And I'm no fan of Knowing Better about the Japanese playing victim. It's insane what people have not looked into over the years. Unit 731, all the experiments, the fact that they had invaded China years prior, that was pretty much a genocide too. But of course, World War II history doesn't get fully taught in schools nowadays, and the media just likes to run with the narrative, and people just run along with it. It's people on the right and the left both who do this, not just leftoids. Just saying. Continue. Oh, a lot of people heard this comment and they automatically assumed that Tucker was talking about the U.S. bombing Japan. And I want to go ahead and talk about that now because guess what? There's going to be a much, much larger video. It's going to be much, much more detailed. But there's one argument that people have been throwing out there on the internet to say that people like myself are evil because I believed in saying, drop that fucker, drop it twice. And this right here is the take. Well, the Soviet Union, they were about to invade Japan, so it was unnecessary. There was no need to drop the bombs on Japan. Take a second and think on that just for a second. Normally before that, what they normally say is that Japan was about to surrender. Japan was about to surrender, but we dropped the bomb on Hiroshima. They did not surrender after we dropped the bomb on Hiroshima. Then Russia's getting closer and closer and closer to invading. Not to mention we were too. So we dropped the bomb on Nagasaki. Then Japan decided to surrender. Okay, why in the world did we drop the bombs? Okay, well, initially the reason why we dropped the bombs is because we realized that if we invaded Japan, we were looking at possibly hundreds of thousands of lives. By the way, I want to go ahead and say this really quick. I did not say this before, that dropping nuclear bombs on people is an extremely evil thing, and we quite frankly should not do it. But there are times in history where you look at things and you're like, yeah, this is kind of justified, to do this, or at least at that time. I understand some people are probably going to get upset with that take, but quite frankly, I don't care. I believe in being honest with you guys and telling you what I really think. It's just who I am. So, dropping those bombs also saved potentially millions of Russian lives. Do you guys have any idea how many people Russia lost between the Russian Revolution all the way to the end of World War II? It's somewhere between 20 to 30 million people. A lot of times when we talk about World War II, and I'm not trying to make a comparison or anything, we oftentimes forget about the other things that occurred between post-World War I and post-World War II, even all the way to Mao's Cultural Revolution, going into the Korean War, even going all the way to Pol Pot. The 20th century is marred with nothing but death. I mean, it really and truly is, that's pretty much what it is. It's one great big giant century of death. It's also a great big giant century of achievement too, but still at the same time, a lot of death. People forget that during Stalin's purges, hundreds of thousands of people died. Oh, people forget during the Great Famine, millions died. People forget that when Russia was invaded, millions of Russians died. Russia was actually running a bit of a shortfall when it comes to overall manpower. And even though the United States did have a Lend-Lease agreement, which, by the way, the Russians continue to say we didn't need to win World War II, when in reality, if you actually look at World War II, there's no place to say that Russia won. And the reason why I get pissed off with that take is very simple. A lot of people don't know what the hell really truly happened. They completely gloss over everything America did during that conflict. Now, I'll get back to that in a second because we'll be talking about conspiracy theory and what Jeremy Boring said here soon. But the point is this right here. When people love to use that as their justification, they tend to leave out the fact that we were actually saving the Soviet Union millions of lives. And there's a lot more there to go on top of what happened in World War II and what the hell happened when it came to the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Like I said before, they were running a bit of a shortfall when it comes to manpower. So if anybody should be happy that we dropped the bombs, it should definitely be the Soviet Union. Which, by the way, the people who sit here and say that the Soviet Union won World War II, they do this without mentioning the Lend-Lease agreement. They do this without mentioning the fact that, oh, that's right, during the Battle of Kursk, we had decided to invade Italy. which, by the way, forced Hitler to pull his tigers off, even though some people have argued that that was not a winnable fight. It was not a winnable fight for either side. It would have bought the Germans some time, and I'm not pro-German or anything. I'm just simply a guy who calls it like it is, and of course, I do have a military history channel, and I do have a little bit of knowledge on that, even though some people would love to argue that, well, the Russians, no. You also forget that the Russians also invaded Finland in 1939. They got their asses kicked. It was fought to a stalemate, and Stalin lost all. Oh, that's right. Stalin also invaded Poland right after Hitler did. You see, people, when they think about World War II, they think about Adolf Hitler and Adolf Hitler alone, and I understand why. They think about the Nazis. And by the way, the Nazis are wholly evil. But let's also not forget that while Stalin was in charge of Russia, millions and millions and millions upon millions of Russians died from the Great Famine all the way through to the Doctor's Plot before Stalin's death. I just figured I'd go ahead and point that out. Also, something else, too, and I didn't say this before, he also invaded Poland siding with Hitler. And for whatever reason, these people love to forget the Normandy invasion, because without the Normandy invasion, without us tying up the Western Front, Hitler still would have been able to fight the Russians all the way through. It probably would have been a stalemate, but still at the same time, though, the fight on the Eastern Front did not end because of Joseph Stalin. It did not end because of the great bravery of the Russian troops. While it should not be discounted, it ended primarily because the U.S. were running roughshod all over the Western Front. I just figured I'd say that. I did not mean for that take to be so long, and yes, that is for the most part the bulk of the video, because obviously this way is a review, but I needed to go ahead and get my feelings out there. And trust me, there'll be a bigger take on this when it comes to Gear Issue 33 on Sunday. But the thing is this right here. A lot of people obviously went crazy about this, including the Daily Wire, and you saw the tweet that was put up by Jeremy Boring, basically saying that anybody who doesn't believe the narrative, which I've been saying for a while, the Daily Wire was controlled opposition, that you're obviously anti-American. Let's play the other half, and I'm going to explain to you guys why it is I think Tucker Carlson has this actual feeling. And by the way, if you believe in having nuclear missiles, no, you're not evil. It means you're smart, because you understand that nuclear missiles, for the most part, keep other countries with nuclear missiles, at bay. But let's go ahead and roll.
It's not a tough one, right? It's not a hard call for you. It's not a hard call for me. So with that in mind, like, why would you want nuclear weapons? It's like just a mindless, childish sort of intellectual exercise to justify, like, oh no, it's really good because someone else will get it. How about no? How about like spending all of your effort to prevent this from happening? Would you kill baby Hitler, famously?
Right.
So I don't know why we're sitting back and allowing this to happen if we really believe it will extinguish the human race or enslave the human race. Like, how can that be good?
Okay. Let me go ahead and address what was said there with this right here. Most of these people who are protesting, especially those who are protesting at New York University and Columbia University, they claim that they're protesting a genocide. Well, what's going on in the Middle East is bad because war is, in fact, hell. It's a war, not a genocide. Let me explain what a genocide is. The Young Turks, Armenian genocide, that was a genocide. Holocaust, that was a genocide. You could argue that everything that happened, what I mentioned before about post-World War I Russia, when it comes to the Russian Revolution, to the Great Famine, to the purges, you could argue that was actually a genocide. Mao's Cultural Revolution, that right there was a genocide. What I'm saying is that what's going on in the Middle East, while definitely unfortunate and definitely terrible, that's a war. That's not a genocide. Until we see people lined up in the street on their knees getting one put in the back of their head, that's not a genocide. Sorry, it just isn't. You haven't gotten that stage yet. It's a war. And while I am definitely more pro-Israel, I've also told you guys from the very start of this entire situation that who threw the first rock is the person who's ultimately going to pay for all this. And of course, the people who threw the first rock were Hamas. They're the ones who are losing. I remember when that situation first started, by the way, one of the first people who posted online was Andrew Tate. And of course, that post has been deleted. He was screaming, Allah demands justice. And this was while the attack was going on. And of course, you even had Sneeko screaming, Allah Akbar. They were suddenly demanding a ceasefire less than 6 hours later when Israel began to start killing members of Hamas. That right there should tell you who the hell these people are. Now, is Tucker stupid? Is Tucker falling for a grift? Not really, and I'll explain why now. I tried to find some archival footage of Tucker Carlson when he worked at CNN. When Tucker was working at CNN, Tucker was very, very much in favor of the, let's just say, he was very, very much in favor of carrying what he believed to be the line. And what I mean by the line is this right here. He was basically, for the most part, telling you, hey, look, we should be invading Iraq, we should be invading Afghanistan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And while being an Iraq war veteran, my opinions have obviously changed, gone back and forth. I feel justified by what we did. Not fully justified, but for the most part, it's just me. I feel that we got it right. People keep on sitting here saying, well, you found no WMDs. Okay, look, dude, the classification of WMDs is nuclear. Okay, but you still forget to mention the biological and chemical weapons that Saddam Hussein had been working on during the 1990s. You forget to realize all the times he basically blunted the UN inspectors. And you also forget to mention that we had troops on the Syrian border that were designed to keep those weapons that we thought were there back in that country, so that way we could pick them up, because he did have them at one point in time. Somehow or other they ended up in Syria, and they were used on their own people by Bashar al-Assad. I'm just throwing it out there, okay? So before you come over here and start screaming that there were no WMDs and we weren't justified, you might want to pump the brakes just a little bit. Tucker Carlson felt betrayed by the establishment. He felt betrayed by what was going on, probably because he was paying attention to the media at the time, because he was working in the mainstream media. So while it is that I don't agree with Tucker Carlson's take, I do understand where his take is coming from, and no, I don't think that makes him anti-American. So just figure I'd point that out before we go any further. Now to the big one, UFOs.
And we know that there is a real effort, and has been underway for a long time, to keep the public from knowing about it. But that's all known, that's established. I don't think any rational person would deny that. The question is, like, what is it actually? I mean, now is sort of the point where you have to ask, like, what is this? And so that's the
how much of it do you think is ours?
Well, none of it's ours.
None of it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, clearly, the U.S. government is huge. It's the largest human organization. I think there are 2 million federal employees and another 10 million federal contractors, so who are effectively government employees but don't have civil service protection, for example. So that's 12 million people in a country of 340 million working for the federal government. So it's kind of hard to overstate how big the federal government is and how well funded. And so to say the government this, the government that, no, of course, it's people within the government. But yeah, they're working on all kinds of things, obviously, that are classified. But in general, no, they can't control these objects. So, no, it's not American technology.
Let me go ahead and say this really quick. I've seen a lot of documentaries on UFOs and alien activity, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, I don't believe in aliens. UFOs, I think, is a different topic. Now, let me go ahead and explain how it was that I got in trouble with this. I got in trouble a while back. One of the very first videos I released was me saying that I thought that UFOs didn't really exist, and it was, and what I didn't seem to realize is that the UFO community and the alien community are two different things. I automatically equated UFOs with aliens. By the way, what Tucker's talking about, the book of Ezekiel, that's, well, I'll go ahead and play that.
Some of it does, right? Like, for sure, the Kenneth Arnold sightings, that was really early on. That was like the early 1950s. He was seeing these flying saucers, these discs that were moving over mountains.
Well, right. I mean, the prophet Ezekiel writes about it in the first chapter, Wheels in the Sky.
Yeah, that's a crazy one. Boy, when you
well,
read
it is
that,
crazy if you read it. It's like, oh wow, and
a wheel
so
within a
and
wheel.
not just the Hebrew scriptures, like it's all over every
the Vedic texts,
of course. So these are spiritual phenomenon. There's no evidence they're from another planet. I mean, I think that's the lie, that they're from Mars. Look, space, the atmosphere is really well monitored, right? Both for defense reasons, but also because, like, it'd be nice to know when asteroids are coming. And there's has never been any evidence that there are lots of these objects, these vehicles coming into our atmosphere from somewhere else, some other planet. There's no evidence of that at all.
Yeah, it's in your Bible. It's actually talked a lot about this. It almost makes you think that maybe there's distraction. So when it comes to aliens, I don't really believe in aliens outside the illegal ones. I do believe that the UFO phenomenon is something that, quite frankly, does need to be looked into. But let me go ahead and tell you what I think it is. And I'm going to use another example or another incident that might make you think that This right here is what's going on. Now, the Rendlesham Forest incident is probably the most famous UFO incident in American history. However, the staff sergeant in the case that actually put his hand on it had been asked multiple times what he thought, and he felt that the whatever it was much, much closer to home. He didn't think it was alien at all. I've always believed it was some form of technology that we have been working on, or somebody else has been working on, more than likely us, because of everything that happened post-World War II. I would be willing to bet that it's probably some technology that, quite frankly, is hidden. Some technology that, quite frankly, we don't really know about, but we probably have. I love to think about back when the Wright brothers decided to, let's just say when the Wright brothers kind of broke the barrier and they were actually able to fly. They went down, came out here to Kitty Hawk, which is near where I live at. And of course, I just kind of gave away my location, but I didn't really mean to. But still, at the same time, though, Kitty Hawk, where they were the first guys to actually fly. Well, the point is this right here. Weeks prior to that, people were saying men would never be able to fly. Well, the Wright brothers ensured that we would get the technology to eventually fly. So, yeah, I think whatever it is technology that, quite frankly, is hidden that we don't really talk about or discuss because, quite frankly, we're not supposed to know about it. But that's just me. Spiritual entity side, by the way, I do agree with him on, because there are several stories where these incidents have occurred where people will say, all you got to do is, I was praying, or I mentioned God, or I even quoted a Bible verse, and all of a sudden the thing went away. Whatever it is, I believe is, in fact, demonic and not actually alien. I believe it's actual demons. That right there is just me. But this video right here is getting a little bit longer than it needed to get. So let's go ahead and close this thing down. And how we're going to close this video down is we're going to go back and look at that tweet that I posted one more time. Here's the thing about conspiracies, guys. Everybody's got their own little niche. Everybody's got their own little thing that they believe, thing that they don't believe. Some people got crazy beliefs. Some people don't have crazy beliefs. Me, for example, I'm the kind of guy who doesn't believe Oswald did it. I believe it was a triangulated crossfire that took out Kennedy. And quite frankly, you won't convince me otherwise. I've seen way too much evidence, and I've gotten to conversations with people who believe Oswald did it. And they just believe Oswald was the greatest shooter of all time, even though his Marine Corps record showed that he had Maggie's draw, meaning he was a medium shot at best. And it took a minimum of 3.5 seconds to recycle the Manicure Carcano, which, by the way, I'm not going to say his name, but another YouTuber here that I do respect claimed that it was possible because the weapon was very, very accurate, yet the person seemed to discount that in his way, in the book depository, was a Texas live oak. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that these people who think that Oswald did it are just crazy as hell. They didn't even bother to look at the evidence. And the Manicure Carcano rifle was not an accurate weapon at all. As a matter of fact, it was one of the world's worst shoulder weapons ever produced. I also don't believe that Kurt Cobain actually did it himself. I believe there's a lot more to that than we've been led to believe. What I'm trying to say is that every single conspiracy needs to be vetted. Now, there are some that have been vetted and have been debunked. And that right there is the reason why I say that every single conspiracy needs to be vetted. Does it make you anti-American? No, it doesn't make you anti-American at all. I think that Jeremy Boring and them are just carrying the establishment line. Either that right there, or their heads are too far up their asses to where they believe nobody's going to give them any pushback. Or maybe they did it intentionally to produce pushback. Some people do this simply to get pushback. I mean, I've seen a lot of people try to grift off this topic, and of course, they've tried to grift off the topic of what Tucker Carlson said about Nuking Japan. But still, though, at the exact same time, I mean, that's really and truly what it is people just trying to use it to get clickbait. This is one of the reasons why it is I suggest that everybody, when a conspiracy comes your way, actually vet the conspiracy. See how much of it is true and how much of it is false. That right there is just my personal feeling. But you guys, please tell me what you think in the comment section. If you guys think I'm wrong, please tell me. If you guys think I'm right, please tell me. Please leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys have got to say. The bigger video on the U.S.'s justification for bombing Japan, that video will be out on Sunday, hopefully, or Saturday one, I'm not sure. This weekend, I'm going to be going ahead and doing the two videos. I'm actually going to be taking it to two. I know I said I was going to do a video on Will America Remain Israel or pro-Israel, but it's actually turning into two videos, so I'll be releasing that over the weekend, so make sure you guys stick around for that. Make sure you guys please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comment section, and I'll see you guys later.